Hello, it's great to be here. Thank you, Isabel, for asking me to take part in this. I get real excited when I'm in a room with this many cardiologists. So nothing, nothing against the vascular surgeons, but you'll see that cardiology was a big part in my life. Jim Tegens, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, 63 years old. I've had two heart transplant, a kidney transplant. I had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had another cancer that was on my tongue and under in my neck that I had 23 lymph nodes removed. I had about 12 pneumonias. One came very close to killing me, and a host of, now this obviously. So I was successful and prevailing in everything else. My last heart transplant was in 2018. It was a heart kidney. I was ready to go. You know, I came home from the hospital, second day, I was at the gym, I was ready to go. And then a year later, I'm on a trip to Germany with a friend of mine who is undergoing some sort of groundbreaking stroke treatment in Munich. And I actually was cutting a toenail and cut my skin. So that began a sort of long journey with PAD and CLTI, which it took well over a year and a half for that to heal. But I'm going to give you a little background before all that and talk about my family and myself, because it's really a family thing. I have a book coming out October 31st. The name of the book is called Saves. I was a goalkeeper in soccer, which your job is to save balls going in the goal. And so that's the name of my book, but it's not about soccer. It's really about everyone who I've come across in my life, you know, from the doctors to the nurses to the people that deliver the meals to my best friends who've really saved my life, because I would not be here without them. And I'm really representing my family to some extent. I'm sort of the last man standing. My father died at the age of 32. I was 21 months old from idiopathic cardiomyopathy. At the age of 32, I had another sister who passed away. She was also passed from idiopathic cardiomyopathy. She was out here at the time. She was in the Navy and then had to leave the Navy because of her health and actually started working at United Airlines. So she passed out here. So at the age of actually, I kind of knew at that time when she passed, I was, I believe, 27. And I knew at that time that, you know, things weren't going to look great for me. So from a mental standpoint, it was somewhat, I don't say easy, but I started preparing mentally that what was going to happen down the road. And as I was getting older, you know, the things that were going on in medicine and transplant was getting better. So even though I was transplanted in 92, it was fairly sort of early in the transplantation, you know, era, right? Not new, but early. But fortunately, I was an athlete all my life. I had run a marathon. I was a professional athlete in soccer, played soccer my whole life. So I was prepared for it, but the one thing I did in preparing for it was I tried to learn as much about it, because the more I learned about it, the less I feared. I had the good fortune of being connected with a great hospital in St. Louis, Washington University, Barnes University. When I found out that Dr. Zaid was here today, I was even more excited because he's obviously in vascular surgery, and I had not met him or heard of his name, so I was shocked because I know just about everyone there. But again, like talking about my family's journey, talking about genes, like I said, I am the last man standing until the point in my life when there were 7 of us in the family. All 7 of us were positive to the bad heart gene, the idiopathic cardiomyopathy. And then along came my 2 children. My daughter Annie is now 26. My son is 28. Annie had to be gene tested because she played college volleyball at Florida State. So in order to play volleyball, she had to prove that she was negative to the bad heart gene. So we went through that year, myself and her, and I was the one that sort of worked with GeneDx at the time. I'm sure they still are around, but I worked with them, and they helped me very quickly in 3 weeks' time get her gene tested, and the results came back negative. So for the first time in our family's history, we had a negative child, a negative person in the family, and that was probably the happiest day of my life. both from her health standpoint, but I was able to go back to the doctor in Florida State and say, hey, my daughter's negative with a bad heart gene. So she was able to play college volleyball. Fast forward 2 years later, I was dragging my feet on my son, and I thought surely that there's no way he's going to be negative. I was lucky enough that one person was negative. So we tested him through the transplant people at Barnes Hospital, and that was a strange one because I never heard for months what was going on, and I happened to be in for an annual test where they do a cardiac cath, and my doctor came into the room, and I was like, hey, I've never heard back from you guys on that gene test for my son. Have you talked to him? And they were like, oh yeah, we let him know what was going on. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about it, So the Dr. Vader walked out of the room and said, let me check on something. And he walks back in the room 10 minutes later, and he's got his head down, and I'm thinking, oh crap, it's not good. He's Dr. Vader, I don't know if you met him, very soft-spoken guy. He's looking down at my feet. He sort of mumbles under his breath, he's negative. And I just couldn't believe it. So at that point in time, two people in my two kids are only two people in my family. So it sort of at that time made everything I'd been through worthwhile. No anger, just the happiest guys can be, because the two things I wanted most was to be a husband and to father, and now my kids are here and they're negative to the bad heart gene. So fast forward a couple of years, 3-4 years, no, actually probably more than that, 5 or 6 years, my son has a daughter that'll be 9 next month. So very, very exciting. And because they don't have the bad heart gene, she doesn't even have to be tested. They can't pass it on. He can't pass it on. So, again, for the first time in our family's history, that is dead and gone. It's gone away. The bad heart gene, idiopathic cardiomyopathy, no longer in the Tegens family. So, talk a little about that journey and how hard it was, but that made it all worthwhile. And I've always been very positive, planned on to take on the world, in my rehab, prepare the rehab, do everything I can. It was when the docs did their job, it was my job to take over from there. So coming out of that heart-kidney transplant in 2018, which there was like a 48-hour period where it could have went one way or the other because I got C. diff and pneumonia after 24 hours of the transplant. So there was a time it could have went either way. Fortunately, it did go my way. So then we get to that moment in Munich I was talking to you about when I cut myself. It would not heal. And then I got another issue where my granddaughter dropped a toy on my foot. That had a cut, would not heal. I end up having to have an amputation of a small toe on my right foot. So now something else is going on. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm ready to travel. I'm ready to run a marathon. I'm ready to do a lot of things. A good part of that was to honor the people that have taken care of me all those years. My heart and kidney donors. I've met my heart and kidney donor's mother the second time around and vowed to her that, I would do everything I can to make sure this heart and kidney last a long time and will not damage it. But this little thing came along called PAD and then CLTI, and I'm just baffled that, that we can put a new heart and kidney in my body, want them twice, but we can't do anything about this. So it's been a rough go. It's been a rough go mentally for me. Now, I do find a way to exercise. The only thing I really don't do is walk or hike, which is a bummer because I would love to hike. My granddaughter asked me to go to the park all the time, and I can't do it. So that doesn't make me feel very good. But there's other things we can do. I work out by doing a rowing machine. I do a lot of weights. I do a lot of biking and stuff like that. So, you make sacrifices. So that's how I got involved in this organization. Dr. Garrity, who's my vascular surgeon at St. Lucie University, put me in touch with Isabel and Dr. Conti, and I came out in June. And, very rewarding. I realize there is a ton of work to do. It kind of looks to me from sitting and listening, it's somewhat overwhelming. But to be honest with you, I had no idea at all what is going on behind the scenes. I really didn't. I kind of thought this was an uphill battle that, Dr. Conti and Isabel was taking on their own. But to come in here today and see everything you're doing, it really gives me just an incredible feel. I know that in my lifetime, it's probably not going to have a huge impact, but to come and see what you're talking about, what you're doing, and especially the passion. I mean, the passion of everyone in this room, it's so admirable being up here. I had a bad week, actually. On Wednesday, I had to get pressures in my both legs tested because I have a new pain. It's significant in my calf, and it's new. Everything I have is never tied to a calf. It was tied to my toes from cuts and things like that. So this is new. So I had those tests on Wednesday, and Dr. Garrity called me that night and said, we're going to have to do another surgery on, actually probably, I see him on Monday, it'll probably be next week, which I haven't had a surgery in a long time with him. I have 12 of them. But he was to the point where he didn't feel the surgeries were doing anything because way down at the ankle level, those arteries, those veins, they were closing right up. So he thought the risk was too high. So we have another one next week. So I was a little bit down coming in here. But then again, seeing the passion in this room and, the different, it's across the country. I'm feeling now that we're going to get there hopefully sooner than later. I wish that I could do more to help. I do, did I mention that I had a book out? I have a book out Halloween. I think I mentioned that. And I plan to make sure I get the PDF of it very soon because the book's written. It's just going to the printer. And I know I'm probably getting the eye to wrap it up. But one of the last things I want to say real quick is in terms of working with the patient, I've never considered myself a patient in my life, and I won't. I've always considered myself a person, that I've got a life to live, and I'm not just going to tell the patient stories because I don't see myself as a patient. But the point I want to make is, your personal interaction, long going with who you're treating. It's so important. It's like I always like to be awake if I can in the operating room because I want to have those small interactions with the surgeon. I don't want to talk to him when he's, and be a hindrance to him, but I want to hear him call me Jim. I want to call him Doc, and it just gives you that confidence level, so it's so important to, I've seen the work you did. I forget the gentleman's name. He lost the limbs, but, saw that interaction you had with him in June and, how much he respects you because I'm not kidding you, the people at Barnes, I just met Dr. Zaid. He's already considered family to me because I've been going there for 32 years and they've saved my life. They've saved my sister's kid's life and their family. So it's so important. And I know everyone's busy, but take the time to, I like to ask the doctor about his family, call them by their first name. And I know you guys do, but that is so important because during that time, the nurses is the same thing. They're your family. They are our family. You are our family when it's the hospital, when we're in the hospital. And, it's a lonely feeling sometimes in that hospital. Then the last thing I would talk about, we talked a little bit recently about exercising to some extent for the patients, which I don't like to use that word, but that has always been in the plan for me. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit tough with some of the cuts, but I can tell you that if I go a day without exercising that night, I don't feel good at all, and my feet don't feel good at all. But if I exercise, I do feel great. I really do feel good. So again, just kind of encouraging that, and everyone's got to have their own program, right? No two people are alike. The reasons they have the disease is probably different reasons. So it always has to be within reason. So I encourage, and I know there's not funding from that, so I get that, but they can do little things on their own. So I encourage that relationship with them, and just thank you for allowing me to share my story. Thank you for bringing the passion every day at what you do. And again, I'm just so excited to see this and the work being done broadly across the country. I get the feeling we're a lot closer than I thought we were. So thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my story, okay? Thank you.